Ambassador Kale stood at the observation window of the Galactic Council station, gazing out at the stars. He had done this many times before. In his 400 years of life, he had witnessed countless species arrive at these windows for the first time. He had seen their faces fill with wonder at the sheer scale of the station. He had watched their primitive ships dock at the lower ports, reserved for newcomers who had not yet earned a place among the great powers. Today was not supposed to be an exception, or so he thought. The humans were arriving. They had sent their first message to the Council only 50 years ago. In the grand scale of the galaxy, that was nothing. The Valoran hegemony, Kale's own people, had been traveling between stars for over 1,000 years. The Dominion of Cre had ruled their corner of the galaxy for twice as long. Even the youngest member of the Council, the Tasari Collective, had been roaming the stars for 200 years, and now these humans wanted to join. 300 years of space travel. 300 years. Kale would have laughed if it weren't so sad. He turned away from the window and looked at the other ambassadors gathered in the reception hall. There were 12 of them, representing the 12 great powers of the galaxy. They stood in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. Some looked bored, others seemed amused. None of them looked concerned. And why should they be? The humans were children, their technology primitive, their ships slow, their weapons weak. The Council had seen the reports. Human vessels used simple fusion engines and basic energy shields. They had no gravity manipulation, no space folding, no quantum tunneling. They were exactly what everyone expected of a species so young. Another newcomer species, said Admiral Vexnar of the Dominion of Cre. He was a towering representative of a race with hardened scales and cold eyes. His people were warriors who had conquered half the galaxy before the Council forced them to stop. I wonder how long it will be before they start begging us for protection. Be kind, said Counselor Miraet of the Tasari Collective. She was small, fragile, with silver skin that glowed softly in the light of the lamps. Not that young, Vexnar replied. My people had conquered 3 star systems before these. Humans even learned how to build a fire. Kale remained silent. He turned his attention back to the window. Something was bothering him, though he could not say what. A tension hung in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm. The station's communication system crackled. Attention all ambassadors. The human delegation will arrive in 5 minutes. Please take your places. The ambassadors moved to the center of the hall and formed a semicircle. It was tradition. When a new species arrived, the great powers met them together. It was meant to demonstrate unity. It was meant to impress. Kyle took his place between Vexnar and Miret. He adjusted his robes and tried to look welcoming. It was his job. He was the ambassador of the Valoran hegemony, representing the oldest and most respected civilization in the galaxy. He had to set an example. The minutes dragged by slowly. Kale found himself looking at the window again. The human ships were supposed to appear first. They would exit hyperspace at the designated coordinates and then approach the station using conventional engines. This was standard procedure. It gave the Council time to scan the vessels. It gave them time to prepare. There, Mirat said, pointing at the window. Look. Kale looked. At first he saw nothing. Then space seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by a thrown stone. A flash of light, a tear in the fabric of reality, and then the ships appeared. Kale's heart stopped. There were 5 of them. By galactic standards, they were not large. The smallest was perhaps 300 meters long, the largest about 500. But it was not their size that made Kale's blood run cold. It was their appearance. The ships looked wrong. There was no other word for it. They didn't look like ships at all. They looked like holes in space. Their hulls were black, but not the black of painted metal. It was a deeper black, a hungry black, the kind of darkness that consumes light and gives nothing back. And they shimmered. The edges of the ships seemed blurred and shifted, as if they existed in 2 places at once, as if they weren't entirely real. What is that? Whispered Vexnar. The arrogance had vanished from his voice. Kale didn't answer. He was too busy watching his scanner. The device was attached to his wrist, a standard piece of equipment for all ambassadors. It could analyze any ship in seconds. It could tell him everything about a vessel's weapons, shields, and energy systems. But right now, it was telling him nothing. The scanner flickered wildly. Numbers appeared and vanished. Error messages flashed across the screen. The device was trying to analyze the human ships, but could not comprehend what it was seeing. My scanner is malfunctioning, Kyle said. Mine too, said Miraet. And mine, added another ambassador. Kale scanned the room. Every ambassador was staring at their scanner. All the sensors were failing. This is impossible, Vexnar growled. Our technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. Nothing can confuse our sensors. But something had. Kale turned back to the window. The human ships were approaching the station. They moved smoothly, silently, like shadows gliding underwater. And as they drew closer, he noticed something else. The space around them was different. At first, it was almost imperceptible, a slight distortion of starlight, a bending of the background radiation. But as the ships neared, the effect intensified. Space itself seemed to warp around them, as if they were so massive that they distorted reality. But they were not massive. They were too small to exert such a gravitational effect, unless they weren't using gravity at all. Kyle felt his skin turn cold. A thought formed in his mind. A terrible thought. An impossible thought. Ambassador Kyle. A voice came from behind him. He turned and saw his research assistant, a young Valoran named Tethra. She was pale, her hands trembling. What happened? Kyle asked. I managed to obtain partial data on the human ships, Tethra said. Only fragments. The data is corrupted, but I found something. Speak. Tethra swallowed hard. The ships appear to be partially out of phase with normal space. Kale stared at her. That's impossible. I know. No species has achieved phase manipulation. We have theorized about it for millennia, but the energy requirements exceed anything we can produce. The mathematics alone, it would take 1,000 years to calculate. I know, Tethra repeated, but the data does not lie. These ships are not entirely in our reality. Then where? Where is the rest of them? In a place we cannot see or measure. Kale turned back to the window. The human ships had stopped. They hovered in space before the station, waiting, and Kale could feel them. He could feel their presence like a weight on his chest, like darkness pressing against his mind. There must be some mistake, he said. A sensor glitch, a software error. These people have been in space for only 300 years. They cannot possess technology that surpasses ours. Perhaps, Tethra said, but she didn't sound convinced. The station's communication system crackled again. The human delegation is docking at Port 7. Ambassadors, please prepare for their arrival. Port 7. It was a high-level port reserved for recognized powers. Kale wondered who had authorized that. Then he decided it didn't matter. The important thing was to learn the truth about those ships. The ambassadors moved toward the reception platform. Kale followed, but his thoughts were far away. He thought of phase manipulation, of the theories his people had developed for centuries. If a ship could exist partially outside normal space, it would be almost invulnerable. Conventional weapons would pass right through it. Shields would be meaningless. A ship could appear and vanish at will, striking from directions that did not exist in three-dimensional space. And that wasn't all. If a ship could access a phase dimension, it could potentially tap into forces invisible to normal matter. Forces like dark energy. Forces like dark matter. Kale shook his head. He was letting his imagination run wild. There had to be another explanation. Humans were primitive. They could not have achieved what the greatest minds in the galaxy could not. The doors to Port 7 opened. The ambassadors fell silent. A group of 5 humans entered the hall. They wore simple clothing, dark suits without ornamentation. They looked utterly unremarkable. Soft skin, small eyes, no scales, no armor, no natural weapons. They were exactly as the reports described. But the woman at the head of the group was different. She was tall for a human, with gray hair swept back from her face. Her eyes were dark and hard. She moved with the confidence of someone who had seen much and survived it all. And when she looked at the ambassadors, there was something in her gaze that Kale couldn't identify. It was amusement, pity, and a warning. Ambassadors of the Galactic Council, the woman said. Her voice was calm and clear. I am Elena Vasquez, representative of the United Human Confederation. Thank you for receiving us. Kale stepped forward. As the senior ambassador, it was his duty to speak first. Ambassador Vasquez, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to our station. We hope this will be the beginning of a long and productive relationship between your people and the civilizations of this galaxy. The words were standard, formal, meaningless. Kale had spoken them 100 times to 100 different species, but this time, something was wrong. Vasquez smiled. It was a small, almost imperceptible smile, but Kale saw it. And in that moment, he realized something. She knew. She knew the ambassadors had seen her ships. She knew their scanners had failed. She knew they were confused, frightened, and trying to hide it, and she wasn't intimidated by them in the slightest. "Thank you, Ambassador Cale," Vasquez said. "It is an honor for us to be here. Humanity has waited a long time for this moment." 300 years of spaceflight, Vexnar said, regaining some of his arrogance. "That is not so long by our standards." "No," Vasquez agreed. "It is not." She said nothing more. She didn't have to. The silence grew long. Kael felt the tension rising. The other ambassadors watched Vasquez, trying to read her, trying to figure out why she was so calm. "Your ships," Kael said at last. "They are unusual." "Are they?" Vasquez asked. "Our sensors struggled to analyze them. My apologies for any inconvenience. Human technology can be unpredictable." It wasn't an explanation. It wasn't even an attempt at one. Vasquez was dodging the question, and she wasn't trying to hide it. Kael felt a flash of frustration. For 400 years, no one had ever treated him like this. Species came to the council begging for help. They answered questions. They showed respect. They didn't stand there smiling, refusing to explain themselves. But he kept his emotions in check. He was a diplomat. He knew that patience was more valuable than anger. "Perhaps we will discuss your technology later," he said. "For now, let us focus on the official ceremonies. There will be time for questions afterward." "Of course," Vasquez said. "We look forward to it." The ceremonies began. They were long and boring, full of speeches and rituals that had been performed for thousands of years. Kael performed his duties on autopilot. His thoughts were elsewhere. He watched Vasquez. She stood quietly during the ceremonies, listening and watching. She answered questions with short, polite phrases. She revealed nothing about her people or their technology. She was the perfect diplomat, giving nothing away while appearing fully cooperative. But from time to time, Kael caught her looking out the window at her ships. And when she did, the expression on her face changed. It wasn't pride. It wasn't satisfaction. It was something darker, something that almost resembled grief. What have these people seen? Kael wondered. What have they survived? He didn't know, but he intended to find out. The ceremonies ended. The ambassadors began to disperse. Kael approached Vasquez before she could leave. "Ambassador," he said. "A word, if you please." Vasquez turned to him. "Of course. Your ships interest me. I have studied ship design for many years. I would like to know more about how they were constructed." "I'm afraid that information is classified," Vasquez said, "but I can say they have served us well." "Against whom?" The question slipped out before Kael could stop himself. He hadn't meant to ask, but now that the words were spoken, he couldn't take them back. Vasquez fell silent for a long moment. Her eyes studied his face, as if she were deciding whether or not to trust him. "Ambassador Kael," she said finally, "do you know why humanity developed spaceflight? For exploration? For expansion? The same reasons as everyone else?" "No." Vasquez shook her head. "We developed spaceflight because we had no choice. Because something found us. Something that existed in the spaces between stars. Something that wanted to destroy us." Kael felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about?" "Not here," Vasquez said. "Not now. But soon, the Council will learn the truth, and when you do, you will understand why our ships look the way they do." She turned and left, leaving Kael alone with his thoughts. He stood there for a long time, looking out the window at the human ships. They hung in space like dark omens. Their hulls consumed the starlight. And for the first time in 400 years, Ambassador Kael of the Valoran hegemony felt something he had almost forgotten: fear. 3 weeks had passed since the arrival of the humans at the council station. 3 weeks of meetings, negotiations, and endless questions. And all that time, Ambassador Elena Vasquez had revealed nothing. Kael sat in his private office, looking at the reports on his desk. His intelligence officers were working without rest. They had scanned the human ships from every angle. They had intercepted human communications. They had even tried to bribe members of the human delegation. Nothing worked. The ships remained a mystery. The humans kept their silence, and the council was beginning to lose patience. "This is unacceptable," said Admiral Vexnar. He stood in the middle of Kael's office. His scales shivered with anger. "We welcomed these primitives to our station. We offered them trade agreements and defense treaties, and they have refused to share even the most basic information about their technology." "They refused," Kael said quietly, "or they simply dodged the question." "It is the same thing." "No, it is not." Kael leaned back in his chair. A refusal would be direct. It would be honest. What the humans are doing is different. They are hiding something, something important. Then we must force them to reveal it. Kale looked at the Cre Admiral. And how do you propose to do that? Vexnar smiled. It was an unpleasant grimace. The Dominion of Cre has a tradition. When we meet a new species, we test their strength. We challenge them to demonstrate their military capabilities. It is a matter of honor. You want to challenge the humans to a weapons demonstration? Yes. Kale considered it. The idea wasn't bad. In fact, it might be the only way to learn the truth. The Council had no authority to demand the humans reveal their secrets, but a challenge of honor was a different matter. If the humans refused, they would lose face. They would look weak, and no species wanted to appear weak before the great powers. Very well, Kale said. Issue the challenge, but be careful. I do not think these people are as primitive as they appear. Vexnar laughed. You worry too much, old f***. I have been fighting since before these creatures learned to walk upright. Whatever technology they possess, they cannot compare to the power of the Dominion of Cre. He turned and left the office. Kale watched him go, feeling a strange sense of unease. He hoped Vexnar was right, but somehow, he doubted it. The challenge was issued the next day. Vexnar stood before the entire council and spoke the traditional words. He called upon humanity to prove its worth. He demanded a demonstration of their military capabilities and offered one of his own ships as a target. The council hall plunged into silence. Everyone turned to look at Ambassador Vasquez. She sat in her chair, as calm as ever. Her expression revealed nothing. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled. The Dominion of Cre honors us with this challenge, she said. Humanity accepts. A murmur rippled through the hall. Some ambassadors looked intrigued, others satisfied. Vexnar looked triumphant. Excellent, he said. We will conduct the demonstration in the Theta 7 system. It is empty of intelligent life. We will not be disturbed. That is acceptable, Vasquez said. I will provide one of our battle cruisers as a target. It will be fully armed and shielded, but the crew will be evacuated. This is a technology test, not a fight to the death. Is that understood? You may take as many ships as you wish. We will watch from a safe distance. For the first time, something changed in Vasquez's expression. Her smile grew wider, and Kale saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. One ship will be enough, she said. The hall exploded in noise. Ambassadors shouted questions. Counselors whispered with leaders. Even Vexnar looked stunned. One ship, he repeated, against a Cre battle cruiser? Yes. Do you understand that our battle cruisers are the most powerful vessels in the galaxy? That their shields can withstand a nuclear bombardment? That their armor can survive a collision with a small moon? I understand. Vexnar stared at her, then laughed. It was a sharp sound, full of contempt. Very well, human. One ship it is. I look forward to seeing it burn. He turned and left the hall. The other ambassadors followed, still murmuring. Within minutes, the room was empty, save for Kale and Vasquez. Kale rose from his seat and walked toward the human ambassador. You are either very confident or very stupid, he said. Perhaps both, Vasquez replied. The Cre battle cruiser, Locke. It took them 30 years to build. Its weapons can crack planets. Its shields have never been breached in battle. I know. And you believe one human ship can destroy it? Vasquez looked at him. Her eyes were dark and deep like pools of black water. Ambassador Kale, she said, in 3 days, you will see what humanity is capable of. And then you will understand why we are not afraid of the Dominion of Cre. She stood up and left the hall, leaving Kale alone with his thoughts. 3 days later, the demonstration fleet gathered in the Theta 7 system. It was an impressive sight. Over 50 vessels had come to witness the event. There were sleek Valoran cruisers and heavily armed Cre destroyers. There were elegant Tassari science ships and massive Gat cargo ships. Every great power in the galaxy had sent representatives, and in the center of it all, hanging in space like a monument to war, was the Cre battle cruiser. It was massive, almost 2 kilometers long, with a hull of black metal and weapons protruding from every surface. Its shields glowed with a faint blue light. Its engines hummed with power. Even without a crew, it looked deadly. Kale stood on the observation deck of his flagship and looked at the battle cruiser. He had seen these vessels in action before. He had watched them cut through enemy fleets like a knife through paper. The thought of a single human ship standing against such a thing seemed absurd. The human ship is approaching, his research officer reported. Kale turned his attention to the display. A small dot was moving toward the battlecruiser. As it approached, the details became clear. It was the same type of vessel he had seen at the council station. A black hole consuming light. Edges that blurred and shifted. A shape that seemed wrong, in some sense incomplete. The humans called it the Prometheus. "Zoom in," KL commanded. The image expanded. The Prometheus filled the screen, and KL felt the same coldness he had felt 3 weeks ago. The same feeling of wrongness. The same fear. The ship was small, perhaps 400 meters long, a fraction of the battlecruiser's size. There were no weapons visible on its hull, no obvious shield generators, no external systems at all. It looked almost peaceful, but Kale knew better than to trust appearances. "All ships," Admiral Vexnar's voice came over the comm channel. "The demonstration will begin in 60 seconds. All vessels are advised to keep a safe distance. The human ship has been warned that we will not intervene if they are destroyed." Kale heard laughter in the background. Cre officers were chuckling. They thought this was a joke, a primitive species making a fool of itself before the great powers. Kale did not laugh. He watched the Prometheus and waited. 30 seconds. The Prometheus continued to approach. It moved slowly, almost lazily, as if it had all the time in the world. 15 seconds. Kale gripped the railing of the observation deck. His hearts were beating fast. He didn't know what was going to happen, but he knew it would be important. 10 seconds. The Prometheus stopped. It hovered in space before the battlecruiser. 2 vessels, one massive, the other small. One bristling with weapons, the other appearing unarmed. 5 seconds. Kale held his breath. "Begin." Nothing happened. For a moment, everything stood still. The battlecruiser hovered in space. Its shields glowed. Its weapons were charged. The Prometheus remained motionless. Its dark hull absorbed the starlight. Then, the space around the battlecruiser began to change. At first, it was barely noticeable. A slight distortion of light, a bending of the background stars. Kale thought his eyes were deceiving him, but then the distortion grew stronger and stronger. The battlecruiser's shields shimmered. Their blue glow turned red. Warning lights began to flash across the hull of the vessel. The great ship shuddered, as if struck by an invisible blow. "What is happening?" Vexnar's voice came over the channel. He was no longer laughing. "What is that human ship doing?" No one answered. No one could answer, because no one understood what they were seeing. The Prometheus did not fire its weapons. It did not launch missiles or direct energy beams. It simply reached out with something that could not be seen, something that could not be measured, something that existed in a sphere beyond normal space. The battlecruiser's shields collapsed. They didn't flicker or fail, as shields usually did. They imploded. They folded in on themselves, pulled toward the center of the ship by forces that defied physics. The blue glow vanished in an instant, leaving the battlecruiser exposed and vulnerable. "Impossible," someone whispered. But it didn't end there. The battlecruiser began to crumple. Its hull bent inward, as if squeezed by a giant, invisible hand. The metal screamed and tore. Weapons were crushed. Engines exploded. The great ship, which had taken 30 years to build, shrank like a piece of clay. Kale watched in horror. He had seen much in his 400 years of life. He had witnessed wars, disasters, and the death of stars. But he had never seen anything like this. The battlecruiser continued to shrink. 2 kilometers turned into one into half a kilometer. The ship folded in on itself, collapsing into its own center of gravity. And yet, the Prometheus did not move. It just hung there, dark and silent, while it destroyed the most powerful warship in the galaxy. Finally, it stopped. Where the battlecruiser had been, there was now a sphere, a perfect sphere of compressed matter, no larger than a small transport. It floated in space, slowly cooling. The faint glow of superheated metal was the only proof that it had once been a ship of war. The demonstration was over. The comm channel erupted into chaos. Admirals screamed questions. Scientists demanded answers. Politicians yelled in search of a response. But Kale heard none of it. He looked at the sphere of compressed metal that had once been a battlecruiser, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The Prometheus had not used weapons. It had used something else. Something that could reach through space and crush a warship like an insect. Something that manipulated gravity on a scale that should have been impossible, unless it wasn't manipulating gravity at all. Kale remembered what his research assistant had said 3 weeks ago. The human ships were partially out of phase with normal space. They existed in 2 realities at once. And in that other reality, in that hidden dimension, were forces the Council had only theorized about: dark matter, dark energy, the invisible architecture of the universe. The humans had found a way to access them, to control them, to use them as weapons. And if they could do that to a battle cruiser, what could they do to a planet, to a star, to an entire civilization? Ambassador Kale. The voice cut through his thoughts. He turned and saw the comm screen come to life. Ambassador Vasquez's face appeared on the display. She looked calm, almost sad, as if she had done something she didn't want to do. "I hope the demonstration was satisfactory," she said. Kale found the strength to answer. "How? How did you do that?" "I think it is time for the Council to hear the truth about humanity," Vasquez said. "Call a meeting. We have much to discuss." The screen went dark. Kale stood alone on the observation deck, looking at the sphere of compressed metal that had once been a battle cruiser. The observing fleet was silent. The laughter had stopped. The arrogance had evaporated. For the first time in recorded history, the great powers of the galaxy had seen something that filled them with terror. And Kyle knew that everything was about to change. The council hall had never been this full. Every ambassador, every counselor, every military officer who could find a seat was present. They filled the room from floor to ceiling, occupying every available space, and they all looked at one person. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the hall alone. Behind her, on a massive display, images of the Prometheus were shown: the dark hull, the shifting edges, the impossible technology that had crushed the battlecruiser as if it were nothing. Kale sat in his usual seat among the senior ambassadors. He hadn't slept since the demonstration. He had spent the night reading reports, studying data, trying to understand what he had seen, but the answers escaped him. The physics made no sense. The technology shouldn't have existed, and yet it did. "Ambassadors of the Galactic Council," Vasquez began. Her voice was firm, but there was a weight to it, hinting that she was about to share something painful. "You demanded an explanation. You demanded to know how humanity developed our technology. Today, I will tell you the truth." She paused. Silence reigned in the hall. Even Vexnar, who had been humiliated by the destruction of his battlecruiser, said nothing. He simply stared with cold, angry eyes. 217 years ago, Vasquez continued, humanity established its first contact with alien life. But it was not the contact we hoped for. It was not a meeting of equals, nor an exchange of knowledge and culture. She touched a panel on the podium. The display changed. A new image appeared, and Kale felt his blood freeze. The image showed something dark, something that wasn't quite real. It looked like a shadow taking shape, a piece of night that had learned to move. Its form was wrong. It had too many angles, too many dimensions. Looking at it was painful to Kale's eyes. "We call them the Umbri," Vasquez said. "They exist in the dark matter substrate that lies at the foundation of all reality. They are not made of normal matter. They do not live in normal space. They exist in the spaces between stars, in the void that fills 95% of the universe." A murmur swept through the hall. Dark matter was theoretical. Everyone knew it existed. It held galaxies together. It formed the structure of the cosmos. But no one had ever seen it. No one had ever interacted with it. And certainly, no one had ever encountered beings inhabiting it. "The Umbri discovered us by accident," Vasquez continued. "Our early spacecraft created unique energy signatures. They attracted attention, and the Umbri came to investigate." She touched another control. The image changed again. This time it showed the planet's sign, a green world with white clouds and silver cities. Earth, the home of humanity. "The first contact occurred on September 15, 187, Vasquez said. "An Umbri scout appeared from dark space near our moon. It was curious. It wanted to study us, to understand what we were." Her voice grew harder. "But the Umbri do not think like us. They do not value life the way we do. To them, normal matter is primitive, inferior. We were like insects to them. Interesting, perhaps, but not deserving of respect." The image changed again. Now it showed the same planet, but something was different. Something was wrong. A dark stain was spreading across the surface. Cities were vanishing. Continents were sinking into darkness. "The Umbri attacked without warning," Vasquez said. "They emerged from dark space in dozens of locations at once. Our weapons could not touch them. Our shields could not stop them. They existed in a dimension we could not reach. They struck from angles that didn't exist in our reality." Kale watched the image. The destruction was total, absolute. He had seen many wars in his long life, but nothing like this. It was not a battle, it was an extermination. In the first 24 hours, we lost 3 billion people, Vasquez said, her voice now level, controlled. In the first week, we lost half our population. Our armed forces were destroyed. Our governments fell. We faced extinction. She paused. The hall was utterly silent. But humanity did not die, Vasquez said. We survived. And then, we fought back. The image changed again. This time it showed something different. A laboratory. Scientists were working frantically. Machines were being built. Experiments were being conducted. The Umbri made a mistake, Vasquez said. When they attacked us, they left traces of their technology behind fragments of dark matter, pieces of equipment that slipped out of phase with their dimension. We studied these fragments. We learned from them. By reverse engineering, we recreated the technology of creatures that were supposed to be beyond our understanding. Impossible, someone said. Kale didn't see who. You cannot reverse engineer what you do not understand. We did not understand it, Vasquez agreed. We still don't fully understand it, but we learned enough. Enough to build ships that could exist partially in dark space. Enough to create weapons that could strike at creatures made of dark matter. Enough to survive. She swept her gaze across the hall. Her eyes met Kale's, and he saw something he didn't expect. Not pride, not triumph, but grief. The war lasted 53 years, Vasquez said. 53 years of fighting an enemy we could barely see. 53 years of losing colonies, ships, and people. By the end, Earth's population had dwindled from 12 billion to 2 billion. Our outer colonies were lost. Our fleet was reduced to a handful of vessels. But you won, Kyle said. He didn't know why he spoke. The words just tumbled out. We did not win, Vasquez replied. We survived. They are different things. The Umbri retreated. We don't know why. Perhaps we became too expensive a target to destroy. Perhaps they found something else that interested them. Or perhaps they simply grew bored. She touched the panel again. The display went dark. That was 164 years ago, Vasquez said. Since then, humanity has recovered. We expanded. We improved our technology. And we waited. Waited for what? Vexnar demanded. The return of the Umbri. The words hung in the air. KL felt a chill run down his spine. Now he understood everything. He understood it all. Humanity had come to the Council not seeking protection. They weren't looking for trade, allies, or knowledge. They had come with a warning. Do you believe the Umbri will attack again? KL asked. We know they will attack, Vasquez answered. The Umbri never left. They are everywhere. They exist in the dark matter that fills this galaxy. They are watching. They are waiting. And when they decide to move again, nothing in normal space can stop them. Nothing except your ships, Councilwoman Mireille said quietly. Our ships can fight them, Vasquez said. But there are few of us. 47 ships. That is our entire dark matter fleet. It is not enough to protect the galaxy. It is barely enough to protect ourselves. The hall exploded in noise. Ambassadors shouted questions. Counselors demanded answers. Military leaders argued about strategy and defense. The carefully maintained order of the Council dissolved into chaos. Kale sat in silence, reflecting. The Umbri, beings that lived in dark matter, beings that existed in dimensions the Council could neither see nor understand. They almost destroyed humanity. They could do the same to anyone, and the Council had no defense against them. All their great fleets, all their advanced technology, all their thousands of years of progress, none of it mattered. Against the Umbri, they were as helpless as humanity had been 200 years ago. Silence. The voice cut through the noise. KL looked up and saw Grant, Chancellor of the Valoran, rise from his seat. He was old, even by Valoran standards. His scales were grayed with age, but his voice still carried authority. The hall fell silent. Ambassador Vasquez, Grant said. Chancellor, you told us of a threat that could destroy everything we have built. You showed us that your people possess technology capable of protecting us from this threat. What do you want from us? Vasquez looked at him. An alliance, she said. True equality, not the condescending arrangement you offer to young species. Not trade agreements and defense treaties that keep us dependent on your goodwill. We want to stand beside you as partners. And in exchange, we will share our technology. Not all of it at once, not immediately, but enough to help you defend yourselves. Enough to give you a chance if the Umbri return. This caused an uproar. Several ambassadors whispered among themselves. An exchange of technology on this scale was unprecedented. It would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "And what do you want in return?" the Grand Chancellor asked. "Nothing," Vasquez said. "We want nothing. We offer this freely, without conditions, because the alternative is extinction for us all." She paused. Her eyes swept the room. "The Umbri do not negotiate. They do not sign treaties. They do not distinguish between a human and a Valoran, a Cre or a Tassari. To them, we are all the same. We are all made of normal matter. We are all inferior. And we will all die if we do not stand together." The Grand Chancellor looked at the other ambassadors. One by one, they nodded. "The Council accepts your terms," he said. "Welcome to the Alliance, Ambassador Vasquez. Now, tell us how to stop these creatures." Vasquez touched the panel on the podium. The display came to life, showing a tactical map of the galaxy. "The Umbri are testing us," she said. "These attacks on the outer colonies are probes. They are measuring our defenses, studying our responses. The main offensive has not yet begun." "How do you know?" "Because we have seen this before. This is how they started their war against humanity. Small strikes, isolated targets. They want us to be afraid. They want us to be in despair. And then, when we are most vulnerable, they will strike with full force." "Where will they attack?" Vexnar asked. "We do not know, but we have ideas." Vasquez highlighted several star systems on the map. "These are strategic points. Control them, and you control movement across entire sectors. If the Umbri want to paralyze the galaxy, they will target these locations. Then we must defend them. We will defend them. But first, we must understand one thing." Vasquez's expression turned serious. "The Umbria cannot be defeated by conventional means. Your fleets are powerful, but against creatures that exist in dark matter, they are useless." "Then what use are they?" "They can protect civilians, they can evacuate colonies, they can win time." Vasquez pointed to her ships on the display. "My fleet will lead the fight. We will engage the Umbri directly on their own territory. But we need the support of your ships to rescue survivors, to hold the line while we strike." "You want us to be a distraction," Vexnar said. There was bitterness in his voice. "I want you to be heroes," Vasquez replied. "The people we save will remember your ships. They will remember your crews. They will know that when the darkness came, you did not run." Vexnar was silent, then slowly nodded. "Tell us what to do." The next 6 months were chaos. The Umbri attacked again and again. They struck at supply depots and communication relays. They ambushed patrol fleets and destroyed research stations. They appeared without warning and vanished without a trace. The galaxy had never known such an enemy, but the Alliance held. Human ships flew side by side with Council vessels. Their dark hulls shimmered next to the silver and gold of the Elder Race's fleets. They fought in places where normal ships could not reach, pursuing the Umbri into dimensions no one else could perceive. And slowly, painfully, they began to push them back. Kale reviewed the reports every day. He saw the growing casualty list. He saw lost worlds and saved worlds. He saw human ships take damage that would have destroyed any other vessel. Their crews fought with a determination born of bitter experience. They had done this before. They knew what it meant to face extinction, and they refused to let it happen again. "Ambassador Kale," a voice sounded at his door. He looked up and saw a young Valoran officer. "What is it?" "The humans have requested a meeting. They say they have a plan." Kale stood. "A plan. After 6 months of desperate defense, the humans had a plan. Where is the meeting?" "In the war room. Ambassador Vasquez is waiting." Kale walked through the station's corridors, passing groups of officers and diplomats who spoke in hushed tones. Everyone knew that something was coming. The attacks were becoming more frequent, more coordinated. The Umbri were gathering for something big. He entered the war room and found Vasquez standing before a massive tactical display. Around her were the senior military commanders from every great power. Vexnar was there. His scales shivered with tension. Myriette was there. Her silver skin was dull from exhaustion. A dozen others filled the room. "Ambassador Kale," Vasquez said, "thank you for coming. What is this plan you mentioned?" Vasquez turned to the display. It showed a region of space at the edge of the galaxy, empty, dark, the kind of place where nothing lived. "We have tracked the Umbri's movements for months," she said. "Their attacks seem random, but they are not. They all come from one place." She pointed to a spot on the map. It looked like any other patch of empty space. But when Kale looked closer, he saw something strange. A distortion, a ripple in the fabric of reality. "What is that?" We call it the threshold, Vasquez said. It is a tear between normal space and dark matter space. A door the Umbri use to enter our reality. As long as it exists, they can continue to send forces through it. As long as it exists, we cannot win. Can it be closed? We believe so, but it will require everything we have. Vasquez outlined the plan. It was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. The joint fleet would distract the Umbri with a massive attack on their forward positions. While the enemy was distracted, the human dark matter ships would strike directly at the threshold. They would use their phase technology to reach the tier between dimensions and destroy it from the inside. If we succeed, Vasquez said, the Umbri will be cut off from our reality. They will still exist in dark matter space, but they will not be able to reach us. We will be safe. And if you fail? Vasquez's expression did not change. Then we will die, and the Umbri will sweep through the galaxy without resistance. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she was saying. This was the final battle. Everything was to be decided here. When do we strike? Vexnar asked. Tomorrow, Vasquez said. The threshold is growing stronger. We have days, perhaps hours, before the Umbri begin their main offensive. We must strike first. The commanders looked at each other. Then, one by one, they nodded. Tomorrow, then, Kale said. May we all see the stars again when this is over. He did not know if any of them would survive, but he knew they would fight, because the alternative was unthinkable. The joint fleet gathered at the edge of known space. It was the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. More than 3,000 ships from over 100 species sailed in formation. Their hulls shone in the light of distant stars. Cre warships hung near Valoran cruisers. Tazari science ships shared space with Gat dreadnoughts. Ancient enemies who had fought each other for millennia now stood together, united by a common threat. And in the center of the formation, like shadows among the stars, were the 47 ships of the human dark matter fleet. Ambassador Kale stood on the observation deck of his flagship and looked at the human ships. They seemed to shimmer, appearing and disappearing. Their hulls shifted between dimensions his eyes could not fully comprehend. After all these months, he still found them unsettling, but now the feeling was mixed with something else. Hope. All ships reporting ready, his tactical officer said. The fleet is at full combat readiness. Kale nodded. Full combat readiness, 3,000 ships against an enemy that existed in another dimension. An enemy that could not be touched by conventional weapons. An enemy that had already killed hundreds of millions. It did not seem like enough. Connect to the Prometheus, he added. Ambassador Vasquez wants to address the fleet. Connecting. The display came to life. Vasquez's face appeared, calm and firm as always. Behind her, Kale could see the bridge of her ship. It was dark, illuminated only by the glow of strange instruments that tracked dimensions he could not perceive. Commanders of the Joint Fleet, Vasquez began. Her voice reached every ship in the formation. In a few hours, we will engage the Umbri at the threshold. Many of us will not return, but those who fall will not die in vain. She paused. Her eyes seemed to look through the screen, meeting the gaze of every being who was listening. 200 years ago, humanity faced the Umbri alone. We had no allies, no advanced technology, no hope, but we survived. We survived because we refused to give up, because we chose to fight even when fighting seemed pointless, because we believed that existence itself was worth defending. Her voice grew stronger. Today, we do not fight alone. Today, the greatest civilizations of the galaxy stand together. Today, we will show the Umbri what happens when children of light refuse to surrender to the darkness. She raised her hand in a gesture Kale did not recognize, but somehow understood the meaning of. To those who will not see tomorrow, I salute you. To those who will continue the journey after this day, I envy you. And to the Umbri who thought they could break us, I have only one thing to say. You chose the wrong galaxy. The screen went dark. For a moment the fleet plunged into silence. Then from 3,000 ships voices began to rise. Not in fear, not in despair, but in something that sounded almost like defiance. Kale felt it in his chest. A fire he hadn't known was there, a determination that surprised him. He was 400 years old. He thought he was too old for such feelings. He was wrong. All ships, he said. His voice echoed over the comm channel. Prepare to advance. The fleet moved forward. The threshold appeared on the sensors an hour later. It was not visible to normal eyes. It was not detected by normal instruments. but the human ships could see it, and they shared their data with the Alliance. What Kale saw made his blood run cold. The threshold was a wound in space, a tear between dimensions that bled darkness into the normal universe. Through it poured the Umbri, wave after wave of shadow creatures that defied description. They had no ships. They didn't need ships. They were the darkness itself, having taken form and purpose. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, more than Kale had ever seen. Great ancestors, someone whispered over the comm channel. Hold the line! Vasquez's voice cut through the fear. The conventional fleet will engage the Umbri vanguard. Distract them. Keep them focused on you. My ships will break through to the threshold. They will tear us apart, Vexnar said. His voice was firm, but Kyle could hear the tension underneath. They will try, Vasquez replied. But they have never faced a fleet like this. They have never seen the united power of the galaxy. Show them what you are capable of. The conventional fleet surged forward. It was chaos from the first moment. The Umbri swept through space like a tide of shadow. Their forms twisted and shifted as they moved. They passed through shields as if they didn't exist. They ignored the energy weapons that would have vaporized normal matter. They were everything Vasquez had warned about. But the fleet did not flinch. Cre warships formed a wall of steel and fire. Their weapons burned uselessly, but their crews refused to retreat. Valorant cruisers evacuated damaged vessels, pulling survivors from ships that were being torn apart. Tassari science ships projected experimental fields that slowed the Umbri's advance for split seconds. Every species contributed, and in the center of the battle fought the human dark matter fleet. Kale watched as the Prometheus and her sister ships smashed into the Umbri formation. They fought not like conventional vessels. They existed partially in another dimension, switching between realities with every passing moment. When the Umbri struck at them, they simply weren't there. When they struck back, the Umbri had nowhere to hide. Space warped around the human ships. Gravitational waves rippled across the battlefield. The darkness itself seemed to recoil from their presence. For the first time, the Umbri knew fear. Forward, Vasquez commanded. All dark matter ships, form up around my position. We are going to the threshold. 47 human ships gathered in a tight formation. They accelerated toward the tier between dimensions. Their hulls shimmered with energy no other species could understand. The Umbri tried to stop them. Thousands of shadow creatures rushed the human fleet, throwing themselves at the ships with mindless fury. Some of them broke through. Kale watched as one human ship was engulfed, its hull shredded by creatures from another dimension. Then another, then a third, but the rest continued. We lost the Hermes, a human voice reported. The Athena is heavily damaged. The Apollo is gone. Continue the advance, Vasquez replied. Her voice was firm, but Kyle could hear the pain beneath it. Each ship lost was a crew she knew, friends she had served with, people who had trusted her to lead them. We are approaching the threshold. All ships, prepare for phase transition. The human fleet reached the tear between dimensions, and then they did something impossible. They vanished. One moment, the remaining human ships were fighting against the tide of shadow. The next, they were gone, not destroyed, not retreated, just gone, as if they had never existed. They had passed through the threshold. The battle raged on around Kale, but his attention was fixed on the empty space where the human ships had been. Now they were inside the place where the Umbri had come from, fighting in a dimension no other species could reach, fighting alone. Minutes dragged by. They felt like hours. The conventional fleet held the line, losing ships by the dozen but refusing to retreat. The Umbri intensified their attack, sensing victory within reach. And then, something changed. The threshold shimmered. The darkness pouring through it faltered and slowed. The Umbri on the battlefield faltered. Their movements became uncertain. What is happening? Someone asked. Kale did not answer. He stared at the tier between dimensions, watching as it shrank. At first, it happened slowly. The edges of the wound began to close, like skin healing over a cut. The flow of Umbri diminished, then stopped entirely. The threshold was closing. They did it, Kale whispered. The humans are destroying the threshold from the inside. A cheer swept through the fleet. Ships that had been fighting for their lives suddenly found that their enemies were weakening, fading, disappearing. The Umbri caught on this side of the threshold found themselves cut off from their home dimension. They were trapped, vulnerable. They were dying. The conventional fleet crashed into them with renewed fury. Weapons that had been useless now found their marks. Shadow creatures that had seemed invincible suddenly became mortal. Within an hour, it was over. The threshold had closed completely, sealing the tear between dimensions. The remaining Umbri forces were destroyed. The darkness retreated. The galaxy was saved. But the celebration was muted, because when the cheering died down, everyone realized the same thing. The human ships did not return. Days passed. Search parties were sent to the coordinates where the threshold had been. They found nothing, no wreckage, no survivors, no trace of the 47 ships that had sacrificed themselves to seal the tear between dimensions. Vasquez and her crew were gone, lost in a dimension no one else could reach. The council held a memorial service. Every species sent representatives. They stood in the great hall where Vasquez had first warned them of the Umbri and mourned the people who had saved them. Cale delivered the eulogy. Humanity came to us as strangers, he said. They were young, inexperienced. We looked down on them. We dismissed them as primitives who had not earned their place among the stars. He paused. The hall was silent. We were wrong. The humans survived what would have destroyed any other species. They rebuilt their civilization from the ashes of total extinction, and when they could have stayed in the shadows, safe in their own corner of the galaxy, they chose to help us. Ambassador Elena Vasquez and the crews of the Dark Matter Fleet gave their lives to seal the threshold. They fought in a place we cannot see, against an enemy we could not touch. They saved billions of lives and asked for nothing in return. He scanned the hall of ambassadors who had once mocked humanity, military commanders who had dismissed their technology as impossible, leaders who had been too proud to ask for help. We owe them a debt we can never repay, but we can honor their memory. We can remember what they taught us. He raised his hand, repeating the gesture Vasquez had made before the battle. The universe is darker than we want to believe, but even in the darkest places, something can survive, something can fight back. The humans showed us that. Let us never forget. The memorial service ended. The ambassadors dispersed. Life returned to normal, but nothing was truly normal. Cale stood at the observation window of the council station, watching the stars. The human embassy was closed. Their remaining ships had returned to their systems. For the moment, humanity was again isolated from the rest of the galaxy. But that would change. The technology exchange agreement remained in effect. Scientists of every species were studying the data provided by the humans. Within a few decades, perhaps sooner, other civilizations would have their own dark matter ships. The galaxy would never again be defenseless. The door behind him opened. A young Valoran officer entered. Ambassador Cale, we have received a transmission. From whom? We do not know. It comes from outside normal space. Our instruments cannot determine the source. Cale felt a chill run down his spine. Show me. The officer activated the display screen. Static filled the image. Then, slowly, a face appeared. Elena Vasquez. She looked tired, exhausted, but alive. Ambassador Cale, she said. Her voice was distorted, fading in and out. If you are receiving this, we succeeded. The threshold is destroyed. The Umbri can no longer reach your dimension. She smiled. It was a sad smile, a tired smile. We are still here. Where? Surviving. The surviving ships found a stable pocket in dark matter space. We do not know how to return, but we are searching, and we are still fighting. The image flickered. Vasquez leaned closer to the camera. Tell the Council that humanity keeps its promises. We shared the technology. We helped protect the galaxy. And now, we will find our own way home. She paused. Behind her, Cale could see the bridge of the Prometheus. Crew members moved in the background, working at stations he could not comprehend. Welcome to the real galaxy, Vasquez said. We taught you how to live in it, and now, make us proud. The transmission ended. Cale stood alone, looking at the empty screen. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. The darkness between them was now empty, cleansed of the shadow creatures that had threatened everything. But somewhere out there, in a dimension he could not see, the humans were still fighting, still surviving, still refusing to give up. He smiled. Some species were just too stubborn to die.